Hello, my name is Daniel Schroeder, and in this video we're going to take a look at deploying a PHP website to Azure DevOps. So I currently have my personal website. It's very old and out of date, but I want to keep it around nonetheless. It's danskingdom.com. It is a PHP website. It is currently hosted with GoDaddy, but my hosting was coming up for renewal, and I thought rather than renewing that, why don't I migrate it to Azure? And so that's what we're going to show off in this demo today. My website does not have a database for a backend, but that's all right. And my code is hosted in Azure DevOps. But if your code is hosted in GitHub or Bitbucket or some other place, you can use the same process. And some of my other websites are actually hosted in GitHub, and I've already gone through this same flow. So the first thing you want to do is go to the Azure portal. So just portal.azure.com. If you don't have an account, you can create one. And we're just going to say create a resource. And it's a PHP website. So just going to type in PHP. And we're going to choose the PHP empty web app. If you had a database that you wanted to use as well, you might choose the starter kit. But my website does not have a database. So we're going to choose this one and say create. It's going to ask us for some details. The name of my website and domain was Dan's Kingdom, so I'm going to stick with that. And I'm just going to say website. So that subscription works for me. It's my existing one. I'm going to create a new resource group to hold my website. So Dan's Kingdom website, that sounds good. My app service plan. I already do have one that I'm going to use, but if you didn't, you could just say create new. Get the name for your app service plan, so maybe something like Dan's Kingdom app service plan. Choose your location. The location you pick does matter, as some data centers are more expensive than others. I just have my stuff living in East US. Over here, there's another website you can go to, azureprice.net/region, and it gives you sort of the relative price comparisons of the different data center regions. So East US isn't the cheapest, but it's one of the cheapest, at least as of today. So just be aware that depending on what region you decide to put your application in, it could potentially affect the price. Then you'd want to choose your pricing tier. For mine, it's just my own personal website, so I don't need the production availability. So you can go with Dev Test. You can choose this tier if you want it to be a free website, maybe you're just, or a free hosting. Maybe you're just playing around with it, but you do only get 60 minutes a day of compute. For myself, I'm using the D1 here, so I get 240 minutes a day of compute, which is plenty just for my own personal website. And the reason I chose this one actually is because I do have a custom domain name. So if you choose this one, it doesn't support custom domain names. This is the lowest tier that does. So you could choose that and say apply. For me, though, I actually already have an app service plan that I want to use. So I'm just going to pick that one. And application insights. Let's go ahead and enable that. We can always disable it and remove it later if we want. I'm just going to name it something different, though. Dan's Kingdom website application insights, to make it obvious that this is for application insights. You can see I have a couple other websites as well with application insights set up. So I'm just following this is my naming convention that I like. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that and say create. So it might just take a minute for the Azure portal to actually go ahead and create my resource group, create my app service plan, and everything, and get it all ready. And you can see it working up here, and you'll get a little notification when it does complete. Okay, so here we can see that it has created the Dan's Kingdom website resource group and all the resources successfully. I'm going to flip over here to my resource groups view, and I'm going to pick the Dan's Kingdom website resource group. And so in here you can see it created an app service. This is our application, as well as the application insights. I'm going to go ahead and drill into the application itself. So our application is running. It tells us this is our URL. So if we go there in a new tab, Dan's Kingdom website.azurewebsites.net, and we should just see, a plain blank page because nothing is deployed here yet. So we're going to flip back here, and over in our application, you can go down to the Deployment Center. And you'll see right now it is connected to a GitHub repo, and this is just sort of like the blank template that it starts with. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that, and instead I'm going to hook it up to my source code. And this will go ahead and create a CI/CD pipeline for us. That's a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. So as soon as I make changes in my code and push them up to my remote repo in Azure DevOps, it'll automatically push those changes out to my website. So here you can see it's asking us where is our source code hosted. So there's a number of different options to choose from. In this example, my code is hosted in Azure DevOps, so I'm going to choose the Azure repos. I want to use the Azure pipelines for my CI/CD pipeline. So let's choose that, say continue. I'm going to use my personal organization here, my project. These are just ones that I already have created in Azure DevOps. If you don't have an Azure DevOps account yet, I recommend you go get one. Just go to dev.azure.com. It's completely free for teams less than 5 members, I believe, and you can create your own team projects and everything. So this is where I have my website located here. And so if I just go to the files, here's the Dan's Kingdom website. And all my source code, you'll notice, is in this src directory, just to sort of keep it nice and organized. So if I flip back here, my repository is my Dan's Kingdom.website, branched master, that is all good. And I want to say it's a PHP application, and it's going to ask me for my working directory, and so I'm going to put src, because over here, that's where my actual website files, all my PHP files are located in this src directory. So I'm going to go ahead and say continue, and everything looks good. Let's say finish. And so you can see up here it says setting up our deployment pipeline, and this just takes a minute for that to complete. Okay, so we can see here that the deployment was successful. It has a new build pipeline. It shows now, the deployment center shows that it's hooked up to my Azure repo. The builds are being built with Azure pipelines. Here's a link to my repository. And so if we go ahead and take a look at the repository, I should be able to now go into builds, and we'll see that it actually created a new build for me automatically, and it's currently in progress. So this was not here previously. I could have shown it, but I didn't. That process in the Azure portal actually just created this for me. And if I go and take a look at the releases as well, so this is the build, it also created a release for us automatically. And so if we go edit, we can actually see what it's doing here. So it added a single stage for me, which it just calls production. We take a look at it. It installs an app service manager extension, and then has another step to actually deploy my web application. So go back in here, look at the builds. We can see the build is running right now. Oh, and it just completed. And so I'm just going to flip back to builds. So this is done now. If I go back to our releases, back to the releases pipeline, click here, we can see that this stage, the deployment to production, is queued right now. And so it's connecting, and that'll just take a minute to deploy to our website. So while that's deploying, I'm actually just going to go ahead and edit the build and just rename it, because I like my builds and releases to have a specific naming convention. So I'm going to call this Dan's Kingdom.website, because that matches the repository name. And I'll save that and update build definition name. And here I'll go ahead and do the same thing to my release pipeline. Dan's Kingdom website, and let's save that. Update release definition name. And let's go back and view the releases. And this guy is actually, the deployment is in progress right now. And so just while that's deploying, I'm going to flip back to the Azure portal. So right now with our CI/CD pipeline that was just set up, as soon as I check code in or commit code and push it up to this repo, it'll automatically get pushed up to production. But sometimes maybe your website writes files to the local disk or something like that, and you want to be able to actually go see what files are on disk there. So we can do that. There's a couple different ways. So we can see our publish completed. So if I go back to, here's that Dance Kingdom website, and refresh this, or just tell it to load again, you should actually see my website now. There it is. The first way that we can go see what files are actually on the server, so this is good. So I'll maybe just pause for a moment. So right now, our website's deployed. We have a full CI/CD pipeline set up. It was pretty easy just to go through the Azure portal, follow some wizards. It created our build and release pipelines for us. I didn't really have to do anything. So yeah, that was awesome. That's great. But now if we actually want to go take a look at what files are really deployed on the server, there's this, I don't know if it's a hidden trick, but it's just maybe not well documented or well publicized. But if you put .scm in front of your Azure Websites.net domain name, you can go to that. And it takes you to what's called, I think, the Kudu portal. Yeah, Kudu services. And here you can see some information about your website and the host it's actually running on a little bit. So we can go take a look at the environment. We can see the system info, the host where all this is running, some environmental variables, connection strings, all that sort of stuff. Process Explorer, just to see what processes are running. Yes, there's my website. You can drill into it. But then if we go to this debug console, we can actually interact with our machine using PowerShell or the command line if you don't want to use PowerShell. But it also just has a simple basic file explorer here. So I can look at the site. I can go to the www root, and here is where it actually has all my files. So all the files that we see here in my source directory, this is where they end up. They're in that www root. And so here I can download the files, delete them. I'm not sure if you can upload files through this portal. I haven't found a way to do it, but I also haven't played with it a whole bunch myself. And then you also have the PowerShell window down here, so you can do your typical things like dir or ls to see everything and interact with the files this way. So if you wanted to use PowerShell to edit your files or get more information, you could do that. So this is great. But like I said, I haven't found a way to actually upload files. So what I'm also going to show you is how you can interact with your website, your Azure website, using FTP. So if we go down here, down in monitoring, there's diagnostic logs. Let's click on that guy. And here you can see we actually get some FTP links. So I'm going to go ahead and use this FTPS link. I'll copy that. And here's just my FTP client on my local machine. I'm just going to say I want to connect. For the server URL, I'll take the URL that I just copied. And then back here, if we go up to the deployment center again, you'll notice this tab up here, deployment credentials. And so you can use the app credentials, or you can set up custom user credentials, whichever you like. Here, I'll just use the app credentials for now, so I'm going to copy that. Paste that in. And then I'll copy the password, paste that in, hit connect. And so now you can see the same sort of view we were seeing in that Kudu web portal. So I can see all my files here. Here I can download them, I could upload them. And so if I wanted to sort of go back to the same experience I had using GoDaddy where everything was done over FTP, I could do that if I wanted. And so I just wanted to show you that it is possible. And that can be handy. Like I said, if your website is generating files on the server and you want to get at them, you can still do it via FTP. And it all still works. So the last thing I wanted to show you was back on my old GoDaddy hosted website, I had a custom domain name, so danskingdom.com. And over here, right now, I just have the Azure websites.net domain name, and I don't want to use that for my real public domain name. I would like to keep my existing one that I've had around for forever. So if we go back to the Azure portal, we can go down here to custom domains. And I mentioned earlier, I specifically chose that F1 app service plan so that I would be able to use a custom domain name, and so, or a custom host name. So here we can just say add host name. It's going to ask me for the host name I want. I just want danskingdom.com. I can hit the validate button, and it's going to try and validate this host name. So it's basically just going to try and make sure that I really do own this domain name before I can assign it to my application. And so it says, well, in order to prove, you need to prove that you actually own this domain name. To do that, I just want you to do a couple things. I want you to change the A record of your domain name, danskingdom.com, to point to this IP address. And so if I flip over here to my GoDaddy website, I'm just in the DNS manager for my danskingdom.com. Here's my A record. So it wants me to change it from my GoDaddy IP address to the Azure IP address. So I'll make that change. And you can see I also already have a blog. I also have blog.danskingdom.com, which I also migrated over to Azure already from GoDaddy. That's why this IP address matches. And if I go back here, so it wants us to do that, and it also wants this txt value for me to update that to this address that it gives here. So if I do that, so these are all A records, there's CNAME. If I go to the second page, there's a txt. So for my blog, this Dan's blog. For this one, the host will be at instead of blog. So let's go ahead and add a new txt. The host is at, and it wants me to point it to that address. So I'll go ahead and save that. There we go. And now, anytime you do DNS changes, it can take a while for the changes to propagate. I'm going to go ahead and hit the validate button. Oh, that actually worked out right away. Normally it takes much longer. So I'll say add hostname. And so it's working on it again, so I can click on that and see that it's adding the host name. And that might just take a minute. And I also, so that'll register danskingdom.com, but I also want to add another host name here, which is danskingdom.com, and hit validate. And so it's going to add a CNAME, but it already validated everything, so I validated my A record already, so I can say add host name there as well. And so, as I mentioned, with DNS to propagate, even though these changes might take effect immediately, and it's going to allow me to assign that domain name and that subdomain of www to my Azure website, in order for DNS to actually propagate out through the internet, it might be an hour or a few hours before my website actually starts hitting the Azure portal. But the idea is I should just be able to go to danskingdom.com, and rather than have it hit my GoDaddy website, it should start hitting the one hosted in Azure. And to actually test that out, I could go make a change to this web page, maybe just in my Git repo, and then push that up. So let's do that right now, actually. So let's go to index.php. I'm just going to edit it right in the browser here. Let's just maybe add a new paragraph and say, hello, Azure. And let's go ahead and commit that. My comment, yeah, this is good enough. I'm going to go ahead and commit that. And I just committed it directly on master. You know, if you're following proper processes and whatnot, you'd want to do a pull request and get it into master that way. But for the purpose of this demo, this is good enough. And so if I go take a look at my builds now, this should have automatically kicked off a new build, which it has. So this build is in progress. So it's going to go through this flow again. It's going to take a couple minutes to do the build, a couple minutes to do the publish, and then it'll push it out to the new application that we created in the Azure portal, and it should show up on danskingdom.com. And so I'll give this a few minutes for the publish to complete, and we'll see if this change comes through. Okay, so we can see that the deployment finished, and my website actually does have about 800 megabytes of files, lots of zip files and executables and stuff of games and applications I've made in the past. So that's why the build and release did take a little while there. But we can see that it has added my hostname bindings. And so let's go check out my website and refresh the page. And it looks like DNS still hasn't updated yet. So as I mentioned, it might take, could take 10, 15 minutes, could take a couple hours, could take a whole day. You never know with DNS how long it takes to propagate out. So about 30 minutes after I made that DNS change, it finally took effect, and now you can see my website says Hello Azure on it on the danskingdom.com. So in this video, I've shown how you can set up a PHP website in Azure, hook it up to your Git repository, set up continuous integration and deployment from it, how you can view the files in your Azure application via the Kudu web portal or via FTP, as well as how to set up a custom domain name for it. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you find it helpful.